Let's review one more example. I want to make sure you're fully comfortable with this idea of responsive design and even mobile-first design where it makes sense. So let's set up a quick bread and butter layout, something you've probably done countless times. So we'll add a container here, and we want to center it on the page. And then we'll have a header section, and then a wrapper for the sidebar and our main section. So we'll do a side here, and then our main section, product feature, something like that. Finally, we need a footer. All right, so I have auto reload set up here, which means if I save it, we instantly see the results to the side. Okay, next, just to make it crystal clear where our boundaries are, we're going to add some background colors here. So we'll say background of red, and then for the sidebar, it's not going to look pretty, but that's okay. Background of blue, and then for the footer, a background of black with the text color of white. All right, so if I give that a save, this is what we get. Now, we learned that if we're to think mobile first, that means get it to look good for a mobile device and then grow from there. Now, like I said in the last episode, I'm really not one to beat you up over this because it's incredibly difficult. But nonetheless, you don't have to do it 100% of the time, but where you can fit it in, try to think mobile first. So in this particular example, well, do we want the sidebar to the left and the main section to the right on a mobile layout? Maybe or maybe not. I'm thinking we only want that starting at kind of a medium breakpoint. So with that in mind, let's think mobile first. This is fine, but once we get to a medium breakpoint, we're going to set a display of flex, and that will switch to left to right. So now if I expand this, there we go. And that's it. You just did mobile first design. So try not to make this any more complicated than it needs to be. Okay, now we have all of this extra room here, all of this white space. So let's say we can either hard code the width of the sidebar in the main section, or we can always tell the main section, hey, you can flex to be as wide as you need to, or to grow as wide as you need to. So once again, beginning at a medium breakpoint, set a flex of 1. All right, now it takes up all that available space. So that means for mobile layouts, this is what we have. But as we grow, we get a 2-column layout. Next, I want some padding all around. And you can do this in a couple of ways. So the utility approach would be just add some padding. So we'll do it there, to the sidebar, to the main section, and then finally to the footer. So I think this is okay. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you have a large site, it's now your responsibility to remember what level of padding you need to apply. Because if you end up in a situation where in one section you apply padding 6, well, it's not going to line up with everything else. And even if it's subtle like this, you may not be able to tell, but your eyes will kind of pick up that something's a little off. So if you're fine doing this, if you have a fairly relatively simple site where you can have a single layout file where you define these once, then I think this is great. Another approach, if you need to, is extract a helper class. So maybe you have a class of section, and there, I can't do this here, but the Tailwind equivalent would be to apply that level of padding. Or, if you're not using Tailwind at all, you can apply it there, and now any location here, you can replace that with your class. And now whenever you have a new section, just apply that class, and you'll instantly get the exact same settings, so to speak. But nonetheless, in our case, it's very simple, so I'm going to keep it as it was. All right, so as we expand it once again, we're thinking mobile first, so now we have a basic 2-column layout. The next thing I'm thinking is, at this point, our main section isn't long enough to push the footer all the way down to the bottom. So let's force it. I'll do it like this. I'm going to take all of this, so our header, our main section, and our footer, and I'm going to wrap it within another class. Now on that class, I'm going to set the minimum height to be the height of the viewport, 100% of the viewport. So now, if we take a look at this, you'll see, let's do a background color of gray. Yeah, all right, so let's get rid of that. There's our current height, and in this case, that div's height is set by the height of all of its children. But here, we're being explicit. I want the minimum possible height to be 100% of the viewport height. So that will push it to the bottom. All right, so let's go ahead and add that. We'll add our background color temporarily, and this is what we get. The next step is, all right, Well, we have a minimum height, but this section here, it's not a display of flex, so I can't easily extend this. All right, well, let's fix that. Beginning with a medium breakpoint, I want to display a flex. And instantly, of course, it blows up because the default is left to right, as we learned. So we'll say, nope, I want a flex direction of column. All right, so now each of these represents a flex item. So that means let's grab this guy right here and say, you can flex to fill up all additional space. So if I save it, it pushes everything down. All right, does that all make sense if I bring that back? Remember, our height now is all of this, but the children take up this much space. So we have space left over. What do we want to do with it? How do we want to distribute it? Well, in this case, we're just going to say this section right here can extend as much as it needs to. And there we go. All right, so once again, let's reduce the width. Here's what we currently have. Now, on mobile, do we want the footer locked to the bottom? It just depends. Depends on if we have a background color, a lot of things. But if you decide, no, not for mobile, then once again, let's add the medium prefix. So there we go. Once we get to medium, now we have a 2-column layout. All right, next I want to focus our attention on these features. Maybe each of these features should be a little box. That's fairly standard these days. So with that in mind, let's select all of these, and I'm going to wrap it within a box using multiple cursors here. And I'm going to give each one a background color of like a light gray, and maybe a little padding all around. And this is what we get. So again, the default display for each is block, so they're on top of each other. It sounds like we want flexbox again. Maybe we want 4 up, like 4 columns at this width. All right, let's grab this, paste it back in. But again, this only takes effect at the medium level. All right, now it's left to right. So we have leftover space once again, because here's our full width, but at the moment, each item only takes up as much space as it needs to. And in this case, that would be the width of the text. So if I add more, you can see suddenly the width of that element is larger. We can do a couple of things here. One, we could set a flex of 1. So now each of them will grow or shrink to ensure that each direct child has an equal width. Yep. Or you could be explicit about the width. Width is 1/4. And that'll get the same thing. A little different there, but that would be another approach you could take. All right, but now we still need some spacing. So we could do this in a couple of ways. Let's start with some margin of 2 on the left and right. So once again, for mobile, this is what we get. So maybe for mobile, we want some space below each item. So if that were the case, we'd say MB4. There we go, some margin bottom 4. But as this grows to the medium breakpoint, we probably want to reset that, because you'll see we still have that margin bottom 4 for each of the items. Okay, so here you could say at a medium breakpoint, the margin bottom should be reset to 0. Okay, so here's medium, here's mobile. But now let's bring it back. What if we have more than 4? So let's add this. Now we have a total of 8. Well, once again, our default direction is row, left to right, and it's going to try to fit all of them there, regardless of what width we've set. They're all going to shrink as much as they possibly can to fit those on the page. So let's be clear here. You can wrap if you need to in order to maintain the width that I've set for each direct child. Okay, now that's what we get. So now we need some margin bottom at this level too. So here's what I'm thinking. Let's make it the same as what we have for the left and right, so 2. But now you'll notice the addition of the margins are affecting our layout, because we said we wanted a width of 25% effectively, but then we added margin to the left and right, which increases the width. So this is what we get. They drop to the new line because it has to in order to apply that margin without breaking. So a couple choices here. One, you could switch to flex. So you could say flex 1. And what's going to happen here? Well, because we no longer have a width applied to each of these, that means it can shrink as much as it needs to fit as many in a row as possible. And then for the 2 left over, well, once again, those don't have to shrink at all, right? This can be confusing, so pay attention. For these final 2 items, they're on a line of their own. So that means they don't have to shrink it all to fit as many as possible. There will only be 2 here. So we can flex or grow in this case to take up an equal amount of space. That's the way that works. So if you were to add, let's do one more down here, well, then each of those would be a width of 33% at the bottom. That's how that works. But yeah, in this case, that's not what we want. We want to be clear about our width. So I will bring that back. Instead, let's scroll up. I'm going to get rid of the margin on the left and right. And instead, I'm going to wrap each of these within a div that has a class, and we'll add some padding there. All right. Finally, the width of 1/4 now should be defined on the parent. So we will remove that and apply it at the top. There we go. Now we've removed the margin entirely in favor of padding. So once again, add a mobile layout. This is what we get. So it sounds like we can tweak that a little bit. Let's try margin bottom of 2, or maybe remove it entirely since we have some padding. Yeah, that looks fine to me. So there's your mobile layout. You grow, and now you have a bread and butter layout with a 4-column grid. So one final thing. Maybe for mobile, each of these doesn't have to be a full block level element. Maybe we do have room for a 2-column grid. Okay, well, let's make that work. So let's give a little more breathing room. And we'll select each of these. It now sounds like our width should default. So remember, when you think default, that means mobile first. What is the default even for mobile width? Well, the default is 1/2. But once we get to a medium breakpoint, then we want to switch to a width of 1/4. Now, you might be wondering, well, why aren't they left to right? Well, don't forget, that's because up here we set flex and flex wrap only for the medium breakpoint. It sounds like those should now apply no matter what as a default, mobile first. So I'll save it, and now those jump up. So here's our mobile layout. We have our 2-column grid, perfectly fine. As you grow, we have a little more room, so we move the sidebar to the left, and we switch to a 4-column grid, as you see there. And that's it. These are the basic building blocks for building a responsive design. You're going to rinse and repeat for every single thing. So maybe within this section, you have a little card here with an image to the left and text to the right. But on a mobile layout, you want to change. It's the exact same principles. View it in mobile, get it to look good. Is the position right? Are we applying flex at the right breakpoints? And then grow from there. Now, at this point, if the user is on this size, what do we want them to see? And if we have widescreen, then do we have a little more room? Can we extend the sidebar a little bit? It's 1,000 different decisions you'll make over the course of a site, but I think it's worth it.